You are not struggling the way you think you are. Most people believe they are fighting a lack of discipline, a weak mind, or a bad habit that got out of control. But that explanation never fully satisfies, does it? Because if it were only about discipline, you would have already solved it by now. You have tried, you have resisted, you have proven you can be strong, and yet something keeps pulling you back. There is a deeper layer most people never stop to consider. Your behavior is not random. It is responding to something. Every time you feel the urge, it is not just desire, it is a signal that something inside you is unsettled, unfulfilled, disconnected. And instead of listening to that signal, you learn to silence it. Think about the moments when the urge becomes strongest. It is rarely when everything is peaceful. It is when something feels off. Stress, loneliness, emptiness, pressure, even success that feels strangely hollow. The external situation changes, but the internal response remains the same. You reach for something that gives immediate relief, even if it costs you later. This is where most people get stuck. They focus all their energy on stopping the action, but they ignore what is driving it. It is like trying to silence an alarm without ever asking why it is ringing. And the more you ignore it, the louder it becomes. So the real question is not why you cannot stop. The real question is what inside you is asking for attention in the only way it knows how. What if the urge you feel is not your enemy, but a distorted message? Not something sent to destroy you, but something trying in the wrong way to lead you back to what you are missing. This is where everything begins to shift, because the moment you stop seeing the struggle as purely physical or mental, you open the door to something deeper. There is a part of you that was created for connection, not shallow connection, not temporary distractions, but something real, something that gives meaning, direction, and peace. And when that connection is weak or absent, the soul does not stay quiet. It searches, it reaches, it looks for substitutes. That is why the relief feels real, even if it does not last. In that moment, it seems like something inside you is finally being satisfied. But it is not fulfillment. It is imitation. It is a temporary answer to a permanent need. The danger is not just the habit itself. The danger is mistaking the substitute for the solution. Because the more you rely on it, the less you recognize what your soul is truly asking for. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to treat a spiritual hunger as if it could be solved with temporary fixes. You were not designed to be filled in fragments. You were designed to be whole. And until you understand what is missing at the root, you will keep trying to fix the surface while the deeper need remains untouched. So now the question changes again. Not what you are doing, but what you are trying to replace. There is a cycle happening that most people never fully see, and because they do not see it, they cannot break it. It begins with a feeling you cannot always explain. A subtle emptiness, a tension, a weight that builds quietly. You try to ignore it, distract yourself, stay busy, but it does not disappear. It waits. Then comes the moment of weakness, or what feels like weakness. But it is not sudden. It has been forming. The urge rises. Your mind starts negotiating, justifying, minimizing. And before you realize it, you give in. For a brief moment, everything goes silent. The pressure is gone. The relief feels real, but it does not stay. Right after, something shifts. The silence is replaced by guilt. Not just regret for what you did, but a deeper frustration with yourself. You tell yourself it was the last time. You promise change, and for a while, you mean it. But the root was never touched. So the emptiness returns, and when it does, it feels heavier than before, because now it carries not only the original weight, but also the memory of failure. And the cycle starts again, stronger, tighter, more difficult to escape. This is not just a habit repeating, this is a loop feeding itself. And the more you fight only the surface, the more power the cycle gains underneath. So understand this clearly. You are not trapped because you are weak. You are trapped because you have been fighting the wrong battle. Now comes the part that most people avoid because it forces a deeper level of honesty. The emptiness you feel is not just emotional, it is spiritual, and until you recognize that, every solution will feel incomplete. There is something inside you that was created to be connected to God, not as a concept, not as a distant belief, but as a living source of identity, peace, and direction. When that connection is weakened, ignored, or replaced, something begins to break internally. Not all at once, but gradually, quietly. The soul does not stop needing what it was created for. It only changes where it looks, and when it cannot find fulfillment in what is eternal, it starts searching in what is immediate. That is where the confusion begins. Because the body feels something, the mind justifies it, but the soul remains unsatisfied. This is why the cycle never truly ends on its own. You can remove one habit and replace it with another. You can change environments, routines, even people. But if the disconnection remains, the emptiness will simply find a new outlet. There is a moment in Scripture that reveals this truth with clarity. In the book of John chapter 4, verse 13 to 14, Jesus speaks about a thirst that cannot be quenched by ordinary water. He points to a deeper need, a kind of thirst that only one source can satisfy. That is not just a metaphor. That is a reality many are trying to escape without understanding. So the issue is no longer just what you are doing. It is what your soul has been separated from. And until that connection is restored, the search will continue in ways that keep leading you back to the same place. If the root is spiritual, then the way out cannot be only behavioral. This is where many people exhaust themselves. They try harder. They create stricter rules. They remove triggers. They isolate themselves from temptation. And for a while it seems to work. But sooner or later, the same pull returns. Not because the strategy is wrong, but because it is incomplete. You cannot heal what you do not replace. When you remove the habit without restoring the connection, you create a vacuum. And that empty space will always demand to be filled again. This is why willpower alone collapses over time. It was never designed to carry the weight of a starving soul. Real change begins when you stop asking only how to quit and start asking how to reconnect. Not in a distant or religious way, but in a real, daily, intentional way. It is in the quiet moments when you choose presence over escape. When instead of numbing the discomfort, you face it and bring it before God. This is not about perfection, it is about direction. Every time you feel the urge, there is a doorway. You can either run from the discomfort, or you can step into it and listen. Because hidden inside that moment is an invitation not to fall again, but to return. In the book of James chapter 4 verse 8, there is a simple but powerful instruction. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. That is not a distant promise, that is a present reality. The question is not whether the door is open. The question is whether you are willing to walk through it when it matters most. You have believed for too long that this struggle defines you, that because you repeat the same pattern, it must be who you are. But that is not truth. That is agreement with a lie that was reinforced every time you failed and judged yourself without understanding. You are not your urges. You are not your habits. You are not your lowest moments. What you are experiencing is a misalignment, not an identity. And the longer you confuse the two, the harder it becomes to break free. Because you do not fight what you believe you are. You only fight what you recognize as something separate from you. This is where freedom begins, not when the urge disappears, but when your identity is no longer attached to it. When you can feel the pull and still say, this is not who I am, this is something passing through me, not something that defines me. There is a powerful truth revealed in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17. It says that if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. That does not mean you will never struggle. It means your identity is no longer rooted in your past patterns. So even if you fell yesterday, even if you failed again this morning, that is not your final definition. Your struggle is real, but it is not permanent. And the moment you begin to separate who you are from what you feel, you take back a level of control that the cycle has been stealing from you. Now the question is no longer what is wrong with you. The question becomes, are you ready to see yourself differently, even before everything changes? Now everything comes down to a decision that cannot be made for you. Understanding is not enough. Awareness alone does not break cycles. There has to be a moment where you choose, not based on emotion, not based on motivation, but based on truth. Because there will be days when you do not feel strong. Days when the urge is louder than your intention. Days when your mind will try to convince you that nothing has changed. That is where most people fall again, not because they lack knowledge, but because they wait to feel ready. Freedom does not begin with a feeling. It begins with a decision repeated consistently, especially when it is uncomfortable. It is choosing connection when everything in you wants escape. It is choosing presence when your instinct is to numb. It is choosing to turn toward God in the exact moment you would normally turn away. This is not dramatic. It is quiet. It happens in seconds, in thoughts, in internal conversations no one else sees. But those moments are where your life is being shaped. In the book of Galatians chapter 5 verse 16, there is a direction that changes everything. Walk in the Spirit and you shall not fulfill the desires of the flesh. That is not about trying harder. It is about walking differently, step by step, moment by moment. So the real question is simple, but it is not easy. When the next urge comes, what direction will you choose? This is the moment where everything you heard becomes personal. Not theory, not inspiration, but a real invitation. Because nothing changes if it stays only in your mind. It has to move into your life, into your decisions, into what you do when no one is watching. Right now, you can keep carrying this alone, repeating the same cycle, hoping that one day something inside you will magically shift. Or you can respond differently, not by trying to be perfect, but by being honest. Honest about what you feel, honest about what you have been trying to replace, honest about the fact that what you have been using has not satisfied you. You do not need a perfect moment to begin. You need a real one, this one. So take a second and stop running. Bring your thoughts into silence. Speak to God in your own words, without rehearsing, without hiding. Tell him exactly where you are, what you feel, what you are tired of carrying. Not because he does not know, but because you need to open that door. There is a promise in the book of Psalm chapter 34, verse 18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That means you do not need to fix yourself before coming. You come as you are, and the process begins there. This is not the end of your struggle overnight, but it can be the end of facing it alone, and that changes everything. From this point forward, your progress will not be measured by perfection, but by direction. There will be moments when you stand firm, and moments when you feel like you are slipping again. But what matters now is not whether you stumble, it is what you do next. Because the old pattern says, you failed, so go back, hide, give up. But the new path says, you fell, so get up, return, realign. That shift alone breaks something powerful inside the cycle. Shame loses its control when you stop agreeing with it. You need to understand this clearly. Growth is not linear. It is built in layers. Every time you choose differently, even for a moment, you are strengthening something deeper than the urge. You are training your spirit to lead instead of reacting automatically. There is a passage in the book of Proverbs chapter 24 verse 16 that reveals this truth. It says that even if the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. The difference is not in never falling. The difference is in never staying down. So do not measure your journey by your worst day. Measure it by your willingness to stand again, to return again, to reconnect again. Because every return weakens the cycle and strengthens your freedom. And slowly, without you even noticing at first, what once controlled you will begin to lose its grip. Now you see it clearly. This was never just about stopping a behavior. It was about restoring a connection, reclaiming your identity, and responding to what your soul has been asking for all along. The struggle you have been facing was not meaningless. It was revealing something deeper, something that needed attention, not condemnation. And now you have a choice. Not a temporary decision driven by emotion, but a steady commitment to walk in a different direction, even when it feels uncomfortable. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to feel completely ready. What you need is to take the next step with awareness, with intention, and with the understanding that you are no longer fighting blindly. There is a truth in the book of John chapter 8 verse 36 that settles this completely. If the Son sets you free, you shall be free indeed. That is not partial freedom, that is not temporary relief, that is real, lasting transformation. So from this moment on, When the urge comes, when the thoughts return, when the old pattern tries to pull you back, remember what you have learned here. You are not empty without a reason. You are not broken beyond repair. You are being called to something deeper. And the way forward is no longer hidden from you. This is where your new life is built, not in one big moment, but in small decisions no one else sees. The real transformation will not happen when everything feels easy. It will happen in the ordinary days when nothing seems different, but you choose differently anyway. You wake up and the thoughts are still there. The feelings have not completely disappeared. Part of you wonders if anything truly changed, and that is exactly where your faith is formed. Not in certainty, but in consistency. Not in emotion, but in obedience to what you now know is true. You will learn to recognize your triggers, not to fear them, but to understand them. You will begin to pause before reacting. That pause is powerful. In that space, you are no longer a prisoner of impulse. You are a person with direction. And as you keep choosing connection over escape, something inside you starts to stabilize. The chaos quiets. The need for constant relief weakens. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you are no longer trying to solve a spiritual hunger with temporary solutions. There is guidance in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 2 that speaks directly to this process. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That renewal does not happen once, it happens daily as you replace old patterns with truth. So do not look for instant perfection, look for steady progress, because the life you are building now is not fragile. It is being rooted in something that does not collapse. There is something powerful you need to understand before you move forward. Freedom is not just about what you leave behind. It is about what you step into. Because if you only focus on what you are trying to escape, your mind will stay attached to it. But when you begin to focus on who you are becoming, everything starts to shift. You were not created just to avoid destruction. You were created to live with purpose, clarity, and peace. And the moment you start aligning your life with that truth, the things that once pulled you begin to lose their appeal. Not because they disappear, but because they no longer match who you are becoming. This is where many people miss the transformation. They try to remove the old life without building the new one. But real change requires both. You let go and you replace. You release and you receive. There is a clear direction in the book of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22 to 24. It speaks about putting off the old self and putting on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. That means your journey is not just about breaking habits. It is about becoming someone aligned with truth. So lift your vision beyond the struggle. Stop seeing yourself only as someone trying to quit something. Start seeing yourself as someone being rebuilt, restored, and redirected. Because when your identity grows, your old patterns no longer fit. Now there is one last truth you need to carry with you, because this is what will sustain you when no one is around. When the voice of doubt tries to return, when the silence feels heavy again, you are not alone in this process. Not in a symbolic way, not as a distant idea, but in a real present way. God is not waiting for you to become perfect to walk with you. He meets you in the middle of your process, in your effort, in your return, in your decision to keep going even when it feels slow. There will be moments when you feel strong, and moments when you feel weak, moments when everything is clear, and moments when confusion tries to creep back in. But His presence is not based on your performance, it is based on His nature. In the book of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10, there is a promise that anchors this completely. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. That means your strength is not something you have to generate alone. It is something you can receive. So when the next difficult moment comes, do not isolate yourself in your thoughts. Turn outward. Turn upward. Speak, even if your voice feels weak. Reach, even if your faith feels small. Because the journey you are on now is not sustained by your perfection. It is sustained by your willingness to stay connected. And that changes everything. Now it becomes clear why this message reached you. Not by accident, not as just another video, but as a moment of interruption in a cycle that was quietly repeating itself. Something inside you recognized the truth before your mind could fully explain it. You have been trying to fix the surface, while your soul has been asking for something deeper. And now you see it, the connection, the pattern, the reason behind the struggle. This awareness is not small. It is the beginning of a different path, but this is where many people stop. They feel the impact, they understand the message, and then they return to the same routine without taking a step. Do not let that be your story, because truth without action slowly fades, and the old patterns are always waiting to take back space. Right now you have a window, a moment where clarity is stronger than confusion. Use it. Decide what your next step will be. Not tomorrow, not someday, but today. In the book of Hebrews chapter 3 verse 15, there is a direct call. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. That means when truth becomes clear, it requires a response. So do not just feel this message. Act on it. Even if the step is small, even if it feels simple, take it. Because the life you are stepping into will not be built by what you heard, but by what you choose to do with it. This is the point where you draw a line, not in emotion, but in conviction. Not a loud declaration for others to see, but a quiet decision that reshapes the way you move from now on. You have seen the pattern. You understand the route. You recognize the invitation. Now it comes down to commitment. Not the kind that depends on how you feel tomorrow, but the kind that remains even when it gets difficult. There will be resistance. There will be moments where the old pull feels familiar, almost comfortable. But now you know what it really is. Not relief, not solution, but a return to something that never satisfied you. So when that moment comes, you pause. You remember, you realign, not perfectly, but intentionally. And every time you do that, you reinforce a new path. A path that leads to clarity instead of confusion, to peace instead of temporary escape. In the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 15, there is a decision that echoes through time. Choose this day whom you will serve. That is not just about belief, it is about direction. It is about what you turn to when you are tested. So this is your moment, not to try again the same way, but to walk forward differently, with awareness, with connection, with truth guiding your steps. Because the decision you make now is not just about breaking a cycle. It is about stepping into the life that was always meant for you.